Hello, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. I'm really excited you're here. Appreciate you taking the time. I know time is valuable. I want to make sure this is a very informative session for you, so I will give you as much information as I can within this hour time frame. I'm going to give you a little bit of resources to be able to take away at the end and hopefully not overwhelming. So I've been in cyber since 2008, and I'm extremely passionate about this topic. For fun, research hackers and ransomware gangs and all of their shenanigans. So I'm very much so aware of what's happening in this landscape right now, who it's happening to, why it's happening, and where we're really struggling as small businesses. And here we are, small businesses, Canadian organizations. And so I want to be able to talk a lot about what is happening out there, how you as a leader and an individual in your organization, anyone actually in your organization, can come in and take steps to be able to take those critical steps for your business success. So we'll cover why cybersecurity matters. We'll talk about that threat landscape that we're up against. We'll talk about some of the privacy laws and regulations you're also up against. And we'll talk about some mitigating risks, some best practices. And then at the end, Q&A. Now, I would like you to answer some questions. I'm going to put one in right now, and it's a Teams poll. And I want to know, what is the top concern that brings you here today in your business? Whatever role you're in, what is your top concern today? So Matt, if you could launch that, please.
Yes.
And then Matt, when it's done, you let me know. And go ahead.
I'll just give folks a chance to respond here. It looks like the responses are coming in now.
Perfect, thank you. I'm reading them as they come in. And individuals asked if there'll be slides or shared after. Yes, I will share some literature with you personally through the chat. And then Smart Dolphins also shares this material, this video, but not the slides per se. Now, let me know when it's closed, Matt. We have 35 people in here today, or a little less, but I would love for you all to put your input in here. Now, again, these are anonymous, so I'm not going to be targeting anyone of you, but I do want to be able to get your honest concern. That helps direct what I'm going to cover today, because I can go 10 different directions today that could really help guide you, because it's such a vast topic and it's so overwhelming and there's so much to know. And I want to be able to target areas that matter most to you today. Now, you have all inputted some excellent stuff. So as the polls are open and once they're closed, I will summarize them. Awesome. Thank you for being responsive. I appreciate your input. This is awesome. Okay, so now you can close the poll.
I just closed it there.
Thank you. So thank you for your responses, everyone. So obviously, data breach is a concern for sure. Client information, as you can see, privacy phishing, client information through emails, emailing, texts, phishing, spam emails, information gathering, private information, email hacking, phishing attacks, email spamming, hacked accounts, and privacy breaches. So those are all awesome, and those are legitimate concerns. And I don't know how many people you have on your team, but I'm aware of some of the organizations are here, and you know, it doesn't actually matter what size of the team you have, small, medium, or large, you're going to have the same concerns that a bank will have. Oh, sorry, there's some feedback, Matt. You're going to have the same concerns a bank will have, or a large organization, regardless of the location as well. So I just want to be able to clarify that right now, that you're not necessarily immune regardless of your size. You're not immune regardless of your location. So your reach is just as easy and vulnerable as an organization regardless. And so now that I've clarified that, let's get into this. So let's start with something kind of fun.
I'm Inspector Rapp of the United States Customs Service. Has all this stuff passed through customs already?
No, this is the bonded area.
Well, then tell me something. Answer a question for me. How can a black man, dressed like me, just march into your warehouse, walk into the bonded area, and start poking around without anyone asking me any questions whatsoever?
Well, I don't know.
Oh, thank you. That's the answer I was looking for. Why don't you guys just give me your ID numbers, because somebody's going to lose their job behind this. This guy gave me a match, for Christ's sake.
You gave him a match?
Listen to me. I do security checks all over the nation. And with the exception of Cleveland, this place has the worst security in the nation. Now, I suggest you guys call your wives, because we're going to be here all night. We're going to check the background of each and every crate in this section, starting with this one right here.
Now, the inspector needs all the information on those airway bill numbers.
And all the manifests, too.
That's right, and he needs the records of all shipments due into the same destination. What's this all about? Just do it.
So I just wanted to be able to kind of show you that clip. Everyone knows who that is, Axel Foley. He was the best con artist out there. What's funny is each of his movies, that's pretty much what he's doing. He's just a con artist, even though he's a policeman, but he's, it's a physical example of social engineering, really, like just convincing those individuals he's someone else and he's someone important and he has some, energy behind the way he's talking and convincing them who he is. And if you notice, they don't double check anything. They don't verify anything. They just go, oh, he's convincing, he's excitable, he's angry, we better comply. So what we have here is, I would call what we're up against is identity crisis. Straight up. So it doesn't actually matter if you have brick and mortar, because you do, you have office with locked doors, you have keys, you have maybe key fobs, and that's physical security, and you got that down pat. But what we have now is that isn't actually the only thing you have an issue with. You have also all of the digital devices and the software that you're using to be able to do your business every day. However, all of your staff, in order for them to do their work, they're accessing software. And how are they accessing that software? They're accessing that software through their credentials. So me, Sonia, I'm going to log into Office 365. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to be able to access data in SharePoint to be able to do my job. I'm going to access a accounting software through my credentials to be able to do my work every day, to be able to process invoices, to be able to make payments, and also handle incoming new staff or changes of any documentation for your team as well, let alone your vendors, let alone your product, let alone your clients. So your staff rely very heavily on the software to be able to do their job every day. But it is through their credentials, their individual credentials, not necessarily just opening a door, walking into a building. They have a very specific job with a very specific role, touching data inside of your organization. Now, if you want to think, I want you to put on two lenses today. One is, what are you accessing every day? And then think about what your team is accessing every day. Do they know what they're accessing for data? Now, I can tell you, honestly, most of them don't. They don't know what they're accessing is actually considered crown jewels. In our profession, we call it crown jewels, which means if your business went down today, what would your company struggle without access to? So what is it? Is it a product? Is it a service? But what data under those line items, those categories, help your business move forward every day? So each of your individual staff members have access to some of those crown jewels. What crown jewels is very evident to you as a leader or a manager, or even an individual who I handle accounting, I handle HR records. Those are crown jewels. Those are critical to your business every day. So the thing is that what we're up against is the fact that hackers also know that as well. because people are the access point to any organization. That's the bottom line. So people equal identity. Identity equals access. So hackers have figured this one out. No big mastermind by any means. However, organizations haven't figured this out. So they're like whack-a-mole trying to figure out, what do we stop? What do we do? What do we protect? How, when, how much? And they have no clue as to where this actually needs to start, what needs to be emphasized and protected, and what needs to actually maybe not be as emphasized or protected. Now, so if your staff don't know like how to protect their work identity and they don't know that they're at risk, then who's protecting the data? Who's protecting the systems, right? And so the thing is that that's what we need to figure out today, because you're up against hackers who are incredibly sophisticated. I could go on and on and on and talk about ransomware gangs. I can talk about hackers. I can talk about the tools they use and all of the sophisticated software they're using to be able to target your staff. So I'm going into a little bit today, but they're doing this because, one, it is where the money is. There is no question about it. They're doing it because they know the data is valuable. You know the data is valuable. You're doing it. That's why you're doing the business that you're doing. And then they're doing it because they have such sophisticated tools. They can do it with their eyes closed, some of them, because it's so easy, because we're, as an organization, so vulnerable. And we're not even aware of how vulnerable we are, because we're not even looking at it. You know, we're just kind of going blind to like, oh, I just offer these services and I offer these products. We're doing our best. Oh, well. And I mean, there's got to be a new level of accountability. And in this upcoming year, looking at the year behind us, we've had no decrease in any of this activity. Was anyone hopeful? Maybe. Maybe the federal agencies were hopeful things would decline, that businesses would increase their security posture. Hackers would chill out and not come after small organizations, health organizations, banking organizations, educational institutions, manufacturing institutions, every sector on the planet. No, that didn't happen. If anything, ransomware gangs have considered increasing their efforts. There's more of them now. And we track them on a quarterly basis. We track who they attack. We track when they attack them. We track what they got away with. And then obviously there's a mandatory reporting, so then people notify the federal agencies. So it's become big business for hackers to do their job. Now, so what do they want? They obviously want all of the personal identifiable information from your organization, right? So that they can sell it to make money. So if you don't understand how they do this, you just have to look up dark web. The dark web, you don't go into the dark web, but just look up dark web and you'll find out it's just like Amazon. It's just the way that they do big business to sell your company data. So if your company data gets breached, they retrieve it, they take it, they compromise you as an organization, they can sell it. And it's easily sold because it is worth money. Why is it worth money? Because it has personal information that pertains to you, your individual staff. So you can see the little trail that goes from individual staff member being targeted and then resold on the dark web, so that your staff are vulnerable for sure, but your product is also vulnerable because these individuals, these ransomware gangs, are selling your data for money and compromising your organization. So when we look at this, your staff are working with data every day, and they're being vulnerable because they're being targeted. You're being targeted, actually. And I individually see incoming text messages come at me all the time that are fake. So now, we may know this, but do you actually know that your staff don't know what to do about that? Do you know sometimes maybe you don't know what to do about that? And I talk to people all the time who are trying to ask for help, going, what do I do about this? And it's like targeting their individual phones now. So it's not just coming into the workplace device like your laptop through their work Office 365 email. It's actually coming through their phone. So we have massive vulnerabilities around your end user, the end users, the staff, all of the staff. and even accessing their devices, right? Because it's so easy since we've gone remote for everyone to be able to do work on their phone. And then forget about the fact that like we also have business email that's a complete target for all of your staff. They may know that, but do they know to the extent? Over 75% of targeted attacks begin with sophisticated phishing emails. So a lot of time, a company like Smart Dolphins, they're a managed service provider. They will provide you with services that can help kind of block all of these somewhat, we call them phishing campaigns. However, there's many that get through due to a lot of technology, sophisticated software they're using, AI abilities that are tricking the systems, circumventing them, and getting through to your staff still. And so do your staff know how sophisticated they are? They're so stealth that they're still able to get through and still able to target staff members in any size of organization. That's a high percentage. The way I look at it is like if you're a rock climber, for example, I'm fascinated by that because I'm an outdoorsy girl, and a rock climber, uses all of the gear. They're climbing and scaling a mountain using as many precautions as possible to get to the top of their peak securely and safely, right? And they have to practice doing that, and it takes a long time to be able to hone that skill. However, one error could possibly have them drop for numerous amount of feet and injure themselves significantly, right? So what we look at is the fact that it's really easy to make one mistake through this simple tactic that they're using against us as an organization. And we have to be a little bit more diligent every day to know it's happening every day to your staff, you and your teams, and knowing that that's what we should just continue expect. Like phishing is here to stay. It's not going away at all. It's just getting better and better and more sophisticated. So we have to figure out ways to help our team members kind of combat that on the front end of their workday, because they need to know that's coming every day and expect it. That's their new normal. No one wants to hear that, but that is the new normal, right? So I call it you put on your tinfoil hat. Now, when you're looking at the landscape over the last year, so 42% reported cyber incidents in 2024. So we are now becoming a little bit more US and Canada, or mandatory requirements of reporting are there, and they're getting more and more stringent. 94% of small and medium businesses face cyber attacks in 2024, up from 2023 by 73%. So again, that's not lowering, right? So ransomware is a top cybercrime threat facing Canada's infrastructure, for example, and are we prepared for that? It is getting more and more common, and it's becoming more and more impactful. So the global average cost of a breach in 2024 was 4.88 million. So ransomware and extortion caused median losses of 46,000 in small organizations. So, federal authorities are advising organizations not to pay ransomware, but then there's organizations feel compelled to, and we'll talk about reasons why they feel compelled to. Now, here's just an example of some of the organizations that were hit last year. First Nations Health Authority, Toronto Public Library, Government of British Columbia, Trans-Northern Pipeline, London Drugs. And maybe you heard about London Drugs because you obviously shopped at London Drugs, so that was caught a little bit more attention, right? But why don't we look up, if somebody can help me look up what was taken from the organization First Nation Health Authority. Tell me if you can find out in your search, just Google it, what data was compromised with that organization. And then in the chat, tell me what you find. I'm giving you this exercise for two reasons. One, what are they posting? And two, what's been revealed yet? So I'll give you a second to look that up and then just put it in the chat box. Awesome. What was the day? Can someone else do another search? So if I could get Neil, if you could, or Vicky, tell me what date First Nation Health Authority had a cyber incident. Vicky, okay, so October 7th. Okay. So what I see within a breach like that is they're not actually giving us a lot of information. So if you're a client with them or do any business as a third-party vendor, okay, May 2024, okay, yeah, that's fine. So you'll see that they're not revealing a lot of information. So employee data, yeah, excellent. And the thing is that what I want you to look at this, because it's really hard to understand these headlines when they come in, when you're like, oh, okay, London Drugs got breached. What happened? Well, does it impact me? How does it impact me? What does that mean? So you as an organization, if you can look at it from the perspective of, okay, if I'm running London Drugs, what happened to them? So it's not revealed quite yet. And I think they're gonna have some troubles here because it was such a large breach. So the ransomware gang Lockbit wanted 25 million to give them back their data. So they stole their data, they kidnapped their data. That's 100% for certain. So that ransomware gang Lockbit, which they're prolific, was able to succeed in shutting those doors for days because federal authorities like RCMP could not figure out what systems were compromised, right? How it was compromised. But they were asking for 25 million. Obviously, London Drugs came back with their negotiator, said, we can't pay 25 million, we can only pay 8. Lockbit said, forget it, too bad, we're not negotiating with you, we want 25 million or nothing. So they didn't give it to them. So London Drugs was left with, well, we can't give it to you. And so Lockbit revealed their data. Now, the thing is that London Drugs is only revealing so much information. And then London Drugs is also saying, okay, well, we're going to give credit monitoring. And every one of these, if you look up every one of these organizations, one of those simple mandates they have after breaches, they have to give credit monitoring. Well, you as an organization are already compromised. That is the least of your concerns. You're financially liable, you're financially compromised, your business and reputation is totally at risk, and your staff are completely at a loss as to like how to handle that. So there's so many ramifications around handling an incident. We want to talk about like how we can avoid that because it's too chaotic and you're at the mercy of your shareholders, you're at the mercy of the government, and then you're also at the mercy of privacy laws. So they're getting more stringent. They're buckling down because they know these criminals are coming in and wreaking havoc on our businesses. They're stealing all this personal identifiable information, my name, my email address, my address, my HR records, my banking information, everything that would be personal to me, and they're selling it on this dark web. And then identity theft is going through the roof because they can just resell it, and then these criminals can buy it and then reuse them. And so then companies of all shapes and sizes are being obviously compromised in a way that they've never seen before, not prepared for, but then the government these privacy laws are coming in to kind of drop the hammer on organizations. Now, everyone is going to have to play a part in this, everyone, right? It is not an organization's fault. It is not your staff members' fault. It is not your fault. And you don't have to be a subject matter expert on this particular area. However, what's being kind of pushed to is that you have to put in all of the kind of best practices to prevent this, because if you do not, we are going to have more litigation occurring against organizations like yourself due to the negligence of protecting that personal identifiable information. So you need to know your staff are high value targets, your data is a high value target, and obviously all of your personal like HR records are high value targets, and your clients' information is high value target. So everything you're touching, you have to look at it with a new lens, like, this is private and confidential. If this gets lost with a criminal, I'm now liable. So we don't want to be liable, but whether the government wants to put in new bills so that it safeguards the effects of what one person can go through. And they have determined that it's, if it, could be one, we call it record, or 1,000 records, it still needs to be reported if it's going to cause harm. Now, harm is all relative, but you can just imagine if someone's identity is going to be compromised, that's causing harm, and the litigation will follow suit. So we know we're collecting data from our clients and sharing data with our vendors because we trust them and they trust us. So the new bills that are trying to get passed, Bill C-26 and Bill C-27, is to replace PIPEDA and the Consumer Privacy Act so that it would levy monetary penalties directly against organizations who don't follow them. So that's not going to necessarily come into effect immediately. Right now, PIPEDA is in effect, but it can't enforce too many, it does have litigation and does enforce it, but not as heavy as some of the US laws. For example, if you look at them, there's privacy laws coming left, right, and center. And, California law is one of the most stringent ones right now, as opposed to GDPR, which is the Europe one. Those are two really heavy privacy laws that are enforced. And so most countries are trying to move into that direction so that organizations are liable and accountable. So that means you're liable and you're accountable. So this is where it is a criminal's fault, and it makes me very angry. They're getting away with the activity of what they're getting away with. They're not caught. You catch maybe one a year, between Interpol and FBI agencies and other task force that are coming together to collaborate. But really, they're not catching enough of these criminals to be able to even put a dent in stopping the impact it is on our business. So the government is saying, we as a government need to be a bit more stringent. We need to also enforce laws. And then you as an organization need to also follow, comply, and do your part. So there's a lot of government resources to support these initiatives and education as well. However, you have to take them and put them in place. So if you don't, then this is where you will see more litigation coming up, and individuals, like if I were compromised through one of these breaches and my identity was harmed, I can sue. And then that would be taken to court, and then there would be more civil lawsuits coming in. So needless to say, you've seen it with Life Labs. If you haven't heard what happened with Life Labs, I would recommend you to go research that, because it cost them millions of dollars to put their restructure their organization to secure their organization, because they were liable. Civil lawsuits were costly. They kept that confidential, so they didn't necessarily reveal what was paid out. And then obviously the reputational harm, but then the cost of just the loss of the way the breach occurred. So it cost them $50 million. Can they afford that? Probably didn't have that in their budget, but needless to say, they had to pay that out because they were under government PIPEDA scrutiny, and they were having to comply with these new steps, these new security steps. So we don't want to be in a business where we're going by the government and a thumb under you, telling you, you didn't do this, so now we're going to watch you till you do this, add this, add this, add this. So right now, everything's optional. And we don't want you to think it's optional, because the cost of a breach for you or a cyber incident is going to cost you so much that you may not even afford it. So let's talk about some next steps for you, and then how we can give you some top recommendations for your organization. So now what I'm finding is a lot of staff are having these processes that they're following, but they actually may get them circumvented without even knowing they're being circumvented. So what I'm finding is they have a process, they follow it, but if anything comes in there to say, oh no, please help me with this, vendor comes in with a new request and a staff member comes in with a new request, it allows them to step out of that process and go, oh, that person requested a change of their banking information, so I'm going to give that to them and not follow this process. Or a vendor wants payment through a different timeline, I'm going to do that for them. So we're finding that that is actually where a lot of vulnerability is in an organization, is these not following process and not adhering to verifying the security in those processes. So for example, if there are requests that come in like that, the simple fix would be follow the process, but verify every time. Now, you can say, maybe you won't think that will happen to you, but I can't tell you how often it happens. And it's even happening to me. I just recently renewed my website and updated the account, and no word of a lie, I had phishing emails come in from that exact organization that was updating my domain and telling me I had an amount owing. It looked legit, and I literally just renewed it. So I was like, oh, that's interesting timing, because I just renewed it. And then in comes this, no, you still have an outstanding little balance, you got to pay it. And it, like, if I weren't diligent, if I weren't paranoid, and if I were not, aware of like my process, I would have been like, I guess I should check that out. I guess maybe I missed something. So the thing is your staff members have to be extra diligent to be able to go, what is the process, follow it, and then verify. So again, it's okay to pick up the phone, because these are where your organization is going to be vulnerable based on them being in a rush, them hurrying, them feeling like they're on a tight timeline, or the panic of those requests, because that seems to be the normal thing too. So just like that Axel Foley example, emotion and excitement and emphasis can easily convince anybody, I better do that. So you need to know, you need to help your staff with that. You help your team members to go, we need a verification process, or follow it no matter what, so that we are not sending money to the wrong vendor, or we're not paying a staff member thinking we're paying a staff member, but we're actually paying a hacker. And then the other thing we have is we're having too much information we're sharing. We're sharing it like maybe with each other, and the way we're somewhat negligent about that could be reckless and compromising your organization as well. So you have to consider how you're sharing it, talk about it with your team, and then talk about new ways to do it so that it works for you. It could be simple steps, but either way, knowing that individuals are going to take the easiest path in sharing their files. But we have to talk about that privacy by design concept, where we're like, on the front end, what are we doing with what we're doing for documents, who we're sharing with, and then are we wiping out data points so that it's not going too much data going to a vendor or to another person on another team who doesn't need to see it, and then how are you sharing it? SharePoint access, for example, we call that identity access management, where if I'm a manager and I'm overseeing all of the HR records for the team, I'm not going to give that to a project manager who has nothing to do with this project or nothing to do with my staff and my team. If he's working on building a different software out for your organization, why would he need access to that? But you have to be careful. Who's accessing what files is really critical. So when your staff are sharing files, are they sharing the right file with the right people? And is it the right permission? So do they need to see that? And again, you say, why does that matter? Because what's happening is this is where hackers are coming in, and we call this like they're coming in and injecting themselves, because they can compromise an email and they can compromise software accounts. Just like I told you, that whole identity, they're going to steal and take credentials. Why can't they pretend to be you? And then you make the request, and they're like a man in the middle attack, we call it. So it can be really confusing to you. So we got to cover up and patch all of these vulnerabilities that you have with your people in your organization. And document sharing and what you have in your documents are one of those key areas that are a concern that we have to tighten up. And again, I don't want to overwhelm you, but it could be just simple steps that you start with by reviewing your SharePoint, making sure everyone who has the right access to the right files is given and then who don't need access, you remove those. And then just talk to your team about how they're sharing and get them to take action, help them be proactive. I mean, encourage them to be able to do that. Make everyone be a part in this. Take effort and share this responsibility. So it's not just on a leader, just not one on a manager. It's not on you who's like maybe handling this critical data. Come across it with a curious and approachable way of saying, hey, we need to like be able to change this process a little bit. Can we work together as a team and you help me do this so that we can do this more securely? What would be better? What would help us improve this process so that we could be less vulnerable? So you don't have to know it all. You don't have to act like you know it all, and you don't have to demand change, but you can encourage effort as a team to come together to go, what can we do differently here? We are not doing this super securely. We could improve. So again, I believe it's a team effort, just as simple as a discussion at a board, as a team meeting. The other thing is that what makes these ransomware gangs so effective is because when they come in and steal your data, that organization doesn't have their data backed up. It's just that simple. So if you have your data backed up based on however timelines you want to, if you go a month is enough for us, or we need to back it up daily, whatever it is, if you have your data backed up somewhere that's secure, and again, Smart Dolphins can explain that to you, how a backup that is secure and effective works, because there's different ways of backing up your data, but doing it in a way that can help your critical business units so that if your systems went down, you could retrieve your data and you could say, go ahead, do whatever you want with our data. And then you deal with your incident response plan accordingly, because your incident is now going to be blown up, but you're going to control it in the one manner that matters the most. And that is, they're not going to leverage you with your data. You're still going to be able to operate, run your business, and you still have your data to be able to run your business. You're not at the mercy, because these hackers will lock down every single system that you have, and they will encrypt it so you can't access it without giving them money, and then they'll decrypt it. And if you don't believe me, do a little bit more research, you'll see that they like leave you handcuffed, and you literally cannot do a day of business until you pay them the money. So you need to consider, how are we backing up our data? Who's responsible for backing up our data? Do we have that properly in place? And so you can stop them in their tracks just by doing that one particular thing and covering your tracks if you do it properly. And I might emphasize properly. So, and then you need to train your staff. They need to know that they are the target. They have to be accountable, but they have to know what they're accountable for. They need to know they're touching crown jewels. They need to know they're accessing systems, probably not securely. Or are they following protocol, best practices? Do they know what those are? So if they don't, and if you don't, you need to come together and say, we need additional training so we're on the same page. Because again, a culture inside of an organization has to start with everyone being on the same page. And this is a critical business unit now. Cybersecurity is not optional, it's critical. It's critical for you to be able to run your business securely every day. But what's required of you, that is going to be, for you to decide as a team going, what can we do? Now, we talk about mobile device. There's also mobile device management. So you can get some support on what does that look like so that everyone on your team is following the criteria to do that securely. And more importantly, you also have to know when you have a staff member leave your organization or retire or whatever it is, when they're leaving your organization, they have the data accessed on their phone, accessible to their phone. What are you doing to prevent that once they leave the organization? How are you disabling not only the services, but whatever they may have on their phone, or what are they accessing to begin with, right? Because that is just like a laptop, that's your asset management. You have to manage that asset, and you have to figure out how are we managing it so that if they left or if they had an injury and you needed to be able to get their phone back, could you? Like, there's so many, you have to think about the extreme cases so that you go, if we lost them and they had a phone, what would be at risk, right? So all of these are pieces that could put your organization in a vulnerable position that you can't afford, right? And because we do BYOD, bring your own device, we have to look at that as a critical piece to be able to say, we have to secure that as well. What are the steps that matter? So you can look at mobile device management, some of the key steps, and you can follow those so that you can at least go, what does it take? We can implement those. Now, I have another question for you. So Matt, if you don't mind asking this question about budget, I would love to know, and just put in the survey, what is, do you feel you set up a sufficient cybersecurity budget for 2025? I'll give you a second to answer that, or a minute to answer that. And again, anonymous here. I just want to know kind of what lens you're coming from at this particular day and time. And if you don't know, just go ahead and put in there, not sure. But I like everyone's response as well. Because I would believe that everyone here should know this answer, regardless if it's, I don't know, like you should know that you don't have one, or you should know that you have one, because as a team member, this is an important business unit, business line item. So if you're not sure, that's really good to get to the bottom of too. So, Matt, you can close the survey.
The polls should be closed now.
Thank you. Okay, so various different responses, and that's totally makes sense. You know, reasonable budget, likely no. I need to investigate if we have one. No, we don't have one. Yes, not sure, maybe, and hopefully. So that's fair. Now, the reason I bring this up is because regardless of the size of your organization, it does need to be a business line item. And I'm saying this from a very, very neutral stance, from a outsider looking in, being in the business for this long, seeing infrastructure in every organization, seeing the gaps, that's just my specialization, seeing where they could fix their gap, how they can run smoothly, how they can see the target their vulnerabilities, and run a company with like best practices. It requires a budget. It just does. It doesn't mean you have to outsource and hire, bring in a staff member and say, oh, I need a security, a SOC analyst. No, you could easily outsource it for sure. But what we're finding is, one, the budget isn't enough. And two, organizations are surprised by the budget. And so just like it would, the cost that when you go look at your building lease, I'm not sure what you cover, what you have for a business lease, but when you look at a business lease, it costs money to be able to use that brick and mortar. You also have security systems for that brick and mortar. We're looking at cybersecurity as you got to follow that for your digital business. Because again, you are running a digital business. You're online, you have software, you have services that you're providing, maybe virtually, maybe not. I mean, it's a bit of both, right? But at the end of the day, you're not just brick and mortar anymore. You're not just paper and pen. So cybersecurity is that digital security that you're going to need to be able to even just run your business seamlessly. So I would encourage you after this that you would bridge that conversation to look at like what you should budget and what it takes to be able to kind of add on some of these best practices and these services that you're going to need to run seamlessly. And again, I'm just telling you from a very neutral perspective, this is what I see is that most organizations don't have enough, or they don't think they need to budget for it. And I want to tell you, as I've told you, some of the costs as a ransomware incident have occurred to these organizations and the costs they've paid after. You know, Sobeys paying $25 million for covering a breach. Life Labs covering 50 million. London Drugs hasn't disclosed. Most of these organizations from 2004 will not disclose the total cost until this year, but it's going to be way higher than the budget you put in together as a team to cover off the best practices. So it's going to be cheaper on the front end to be preventative than to cover the chaos and the madness that will ensue after a breach. So that is from a security professional's opinion. So now, if you don't have MFA enabled in all of your software, that is a critical piece for your team. So don't enter any software without using, right? Like that's basically no entries allowed unless MFA is implemented. Because when, I'm going to Belize next week, if I get a prompt from my MFA that tells me, oh, I need to get into your Office 365, I'm like, but I'm not in it, I'm on a beach, I'll know that's something's being compromised in my organization. That's the trigger for me to go, I'm going to call my managed service provider because something's wrong. And again, they're not going to get anywhere because I'm not going to allow them in. But at the end of the day, otherwise, you're not going to know. So MFA needs to be a critical component in your business that's enabled in all of the critical software your company uses. So when you're looking at SharePoint, when you're looking at OneDrive, those are all Office 365 product lines. So when you get in one, if you're using MFA, you're getting into all of them. That will sufficiently protect you by entering in securely. That's all you can do as a staff member or a leader, end users, set up the pieces for your team so they can follow the right protocols. Because there's technology, right? Firewalls, endpoint protection, but then there's your people. And this is one thing your people can do and use. And everyone is familiar with it because it's already in place with a lot of other different software and organizations. And it takes maybe 5 seconds to be able to prompt you for approval access, right? Using the Microsoft Authenticator app if you're using Outlook, for example. But needless to say, there's Authenticator apps out there. Using that takes seconds. And then I can't emphasize enough, passwords still matter. We're moving, we're trying to do passkeys, we have single sign-on, we have all sorts of methods that are trying to simplify your life, but those are all varying degrees depending on the company's budget, depending on the size. But more importantly, every organization still has, at this particular time, passwords to actually handle, to help your team manage those securely. So as we would say, a password manager is one of the simplest steps and less complicated steps because it's like that vault that you just, throw your passwords in and you don't have to remember, and they're secure and they're encrypted. The magic word encrypted here. Everything you need to touch that has crown jewels has to be encrypted. And so that vault is on your app, it's on your laptop, and it can really help your staff navigate all those passwords so they're not reusing them and they're not being flippant about them and putting them on their desk, for example. And again, when we do the end user training, we go a little bit more into password management so that the staff understand kind of the critical piece of how that plays into their day-to-day workflow. And then third-party services are really vulnerable as well. So all I can tell you is, please vet your partners and making sure that they're handling your client data the way that you are required, because some of you are under compliance, some of you are you're regulated. So if you have specific regulations, like banks, for example, they have very tight regulations. So when they deal with partners, they have to vet them stringently under that guideline, and they have to say, do you have this? Do you follow this? What do you do with the data? How long do you hold it for? Where is it stored? How is it encrypted? And those have to pass that vetting process for them to even do business with them. So you have to do the same thing because you're trusting them and you're doing business with them and you're sharing critical data with them. So it's, it's all tied in, really. This is the difference, right? It's so intermingled, and it's all connected in a way where you just can't necessarily take one for granted over the other. It all matters. And then you're looking at change in some respect. Some of your team members are going to necessarily not be super quick to adapt to some of the things that you're going to need to adapt to run your business smoothly. So you're going to have to keep in mind that security change culture, right? So I understand it's easy for someone to get frustrated with changing anything. They get kind of mad. So take the ADKAR approach, right? Giving them the training and awareness, enforcing that, giving them a, like, it's like a really important thing to like emphasize the why. You like give them the why, when I was working with my financial services client, I emphasize the why. Like they care about their clients, saving them money, helping them build wealth. Well, that's enough of a reason to be able to do all the other things around that if they want to keep those clients, right? So giving your staff the knowledge, giving them the ability, and then helping and reinforcing that so that it's a supported environment. And if you're ever finding resistance, it's consistently, it's a change management issue where that means usually they need more information. It's not that they don't want to support it. It's not that they don't want to do hard work for you and do their best. It's probably because they don't understand it. And trust me, I can't have cybersecurity conversations at the dinner table because no one understands me. So I get it. So you have to go, if someone's resisting that change, it's because they need more information. It's just that simple. So bring them along and help them adapt the way that they learn, and you can enforce that change. But I'll tell you, in cybersecurity, that is one of the biggest challenges we face, is that employees are not adapting, and that is the reason why. So you can throw something at them, say, we're now using multi-factor authentication. You're not going to have buy-in because they're going to be livid by this abrupt change. It needs to be very clear, concise, with a lot of data, a lot of support, and a lot of information, and a lot of time. So you got to give people all of that they need based on the way that they are as a personality and their learning style. So again, believe it or not, it's a huge factor in any change, even if you're going to add a new software to your organization. So you were changing so rapidly anyway. So you're going through changes no matter what, regardless of cybersecurity, you'd still probably follow the same principles. So I would say plan for when, not if. So you can't do this alone, right? So you need to have something in place that prepares you for this. So I do incident response planning, for example, and it's pretty vast in terms of what's required of you, but I'll give you top three tips. So fill out an incident response plan, fill out a communication plan, and all staff and key vendors need to be printed out. So all of this needs to be printed out. So believe it or not, because if all systems go down, you need to go to a pen and paper again, believe it or not. So I would say this kind of process takes about 2 weeks, maybe about 10 hours if you could designate one staff member, call it a security champion, to take the lead. Doesn't need to be an expert by any means. It's just someone that can take the information and put it on paper, put it in a binder and say, here's one for you, one for you, one for you, and we're set. So as long as you have that plan in place, then you can be prepared to go, all right, then that's the bare minimum. And then you can do the next steps after that. So you have to just consider building in small steps, right? Review and improve your data management process, conduct a yearly gap assessment, and then enforce your security policies. Also, advanced endpoint protection. So we call it MDR and EDR. You have to do phishing resistant MFA. And then you have trusted cybersecurity partners that possibly you may need if you don't have cyber insurance and you want it. So Smart Dolphins can help you with some of these particular services or software that you don't have and that you would never have the expertise to have. So if you can't implement it yourself, go to a trusted partner that can help you bring these on to be able to secure your organization. And I will provide some documentation in the chat box in a second, but I want you to know, above anything else, you can follow this one thing. It's going to be hard to remember what's an MDR and EDR. I get it. But if you can emphasize to your staff, let's follow a new approach to anything we're doing in our workflow. We verify, then we trust that source. Verify whatever it is first. Pick it up the phone, going to your manager, whatever. If we can emphasize to our team members, that's the one thing we require. So if you doubt it, you're getting something incoming at 8 p.m. at night, and you're not sure, hold off, go verify, wait till the morning, whatever it is, because nothing is ever a rush. And that's what they have to know too. Maybe sometimes they feel pressure, but verify, then trust. Because we used to have this like trust, then verify, but I actually believe, no, you have to verify first, then say, okay, I will do what that request is. Because you have no idea now who's on the other end of that request. So we're done with trusting. It can't be done. You're going to be trusting as a company, as an employer, as a service provider, but you're not going to be going, I'm giving anything to anybody who asks incoming message, email, text, phone. No, those days are over. They have to be over because we just don't know who's on the other end. So I have one more question for you, and then I'll share some resources at the same time.